I'm Felicity and I'm going to be making some socks with you today. Now, if you've been following me in my antics, I have been making several collections of clothing, which I've had a huge store of fabric, which I started collecting over 30 years ago, and I'm trying to make a good cohesive collection of some of it. So you may have already seen me wearing these socks. I did in fact make a pair before. Now these ones are the over the knee sock. I've made a top, which you've probably seen if you've been following me, in the same fabric. Now this one, I did the most complicated one, which has a heel and a toe. Now they're okay, but they fall down, and I don't have any of that elastic that grips, and so I'm going to go for the easier option, which is to make the knee highs this time without the piece at the front. There's several different alternatives for making this, several different lengths and sizes. Here we are. Here's the whole caboodle, what you can make. Now, I'm not making these with my overlocker. The reason being is there are several seams in this, and I am particularly sensitive to seams in socks that are too big, too bulky. So I'm actually going to use the stretch stitch on my sewing machine, because I cut the seam down and make it a very thin seam. If you overlock, it's a bit too much bulk going on, I think. So we're going to make rogue socks, going rogue socks by Wolf and the Tree. So today that's what we're going to be doing. I have to admit that my first impression of this pattern was one of complete confusion, because there are so many lines and so many different sizes, and it's difficult to follow the lines. Now, the other thing I wanted to say was I take between a 4.5 and a 5 shoe. I did a 5, or I may have done a 4. In any case, I didn't feel as though they were stretchy enough. They weren't stretching enough on my foot. So I've now cut out a size 6. Now I was lucky enough that I had enough material that I could actually do, like that one was actually a toile that I did, to practice them. So I have now cut a bigger one, a size 6. This is actually a 2-way stretch. There's a pattern there for a 2-way stretch and a 4-way stretch, and all sorts of different combinations. So I'm going to get on and let's get this going. It's quite a quick thing to do. So first thing we need to do is to sew the heel in. Now the heel is probably the most complicated bit of the whole thing. So get the pattern piece off of that. There we are. Now these are the heel bits. I'm just doing it all in the same material because I just didn't feel visually it worked the way I did it. So here are your heel pieces. So what you're going to have to do now is, with about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, is to machine. I'm going to machine down here, and I'm going to go from there and machine round there. So here we are. I've sewn the sides together. Hope you understand that. My machine decided to chew it up, really. So it's a bit complicated because, it's very thin and incredibly stretchy, so you can't blame it. Now, so here is the most complicated piece. So you have to cut a slit in the socks, like so. Okay, can you see the slit? Right, and then this has to be sewn in to the hole. So you need to poke it through there, through the right way, all right, this piece. find the end of the slit and put that seam that you've just sewn, one of them, at the end of the slit. Now this does get very, very complicated, and I cannot offer much help. It's one of those things where you just got to get on with it, really. So, and this material does not pin terribly well. However, I will try. Right, so I've got one pin in that end there, a pin. I'm going to go over to the other side and pin the other side. Pin that. Right, so you have to machine right the way round, attaching this heel piece. All right, I'll be back in a minute. So there is the heel piece. I hope you understand this. And I've now folded it over, but I have to do it around the other way, fold it right sides together. And I'm going to machine right the way round down to the other end. Now, the one thing that I found, the reason I've done the simple one also, is because there were certain parts of it that were baggy, and I think keeping it simple, you'd probably be able to machine it in again. So I'm going to get going on this. This, as I say, is the most complicated part. It's very frustrating actually, but you know, I guess you have to have the heel bit in there. I know there are several companies that are doing these socks. I don't know if any of them are any different, but anyway, I'm now going to sew around here, round the foot first, and right down to the other end. So I've now done both socks, both of the heels in, as you can see. I've machined down the sides and round by the toe. I've cut it down a bit. Now I wouldn't try and neaten these seams if I was you. As I said in the beginning, that you don't want these seams too bulky. I would just leave them, because anything you use, which is a jersey or a knit, is not going to fray once you've got the stitching around it. Right, so next thing, I've measured these around where I think the socks should come to. I'm going to sew these in a circle, and I will be back. So I have now sewn the elastic going round, and I'm going to put this with the elastic on my free arm. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to do this in one go. Right, so I've turned it over. I'm going to get it on the free arm. Hope you can see that. Turn the top of the sock over the elastic. Okay, can you see that? And now I'm going to machine around, stretching the fabric as you go. To be honest, I really don't like using the stretch stitch on the sewing machine because it's so slow. If you're used to doing stretch stitches and jerseys on an overlocker, you know how quick it is, and this is so laboured. And another reason I don't like to use the stretch stitch that often on the sewing machine, I don't know if you've found this, because it goes in 3 times into the fabric, it tends to puncture it sometimes. And you know how when you buy a jersey t-shirt or something, cotton jersey t-shirt, eventually you see all these little holes down the side. I'm sure that's because they're using a stitch that punctures the fabric. Anyway, this was the only alternative because, as I said, it would have been too lumpy on the overlocker. In any case, I can't do that this bit on the overlocker, can I? So here I am wearing said pair of socks, but I have things to tell you about them. So you saw me machining, and I finished one and put it on, and I looked like Nora Batty. Not sure if you know who Nora Batty is. I'm showing my age probably, but I looked like Nora Batty, and they were all wrinkling. Can you see the wrinkling around the heel? So I decided that they were too long, and I needed to shorten them to tighten them up so that they pulled more. So I ended up cutting about 1.5 inches off the top, turning them over again, and this time I didn't use the stretch stitch, the 3-step stretch stitch. I used the 3-step zigzag stitch instead because it went much faster, and I couldn't see any reason not to use that one instead. Anyway, I'm really pleased with them. I'm going to try and work on narrowing them around my feet, but I think they're workable. Yeah, and don't forget, you can make these over the knee, or you can do short socks even around the ankle. I like them. I like the idea of them anyway, and I think I'm using a very thin stretch fabric, a bit like a gauze really. I suppose it is a very thin stretchy gauze, but obviously you can use anything which is a stretched fabric. Anyway, that's all from me now, so hey, look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.